guys aren't going to get me this time. I'm going to see what Google is telling me his last name is pronounced as.
Richard Henshall.
Henshall. Ha! There we go. All right, let's dive in. The Cocoon by Richard Henshall. So Richard Henshall is the lead guitarist and one of the main writers for Haken. He kind of orchestrated and wrote most of the first 3 albums from them, and then kind of took a little bit of a backseat and had a lot more input from the other band members for the last 2. Because of that, he's had a little bit more time to really dive into his own writing and producing his own music. This is also found within Nova Collective, because he was one of the main individuals behind that, with Nick Briggs from Between the Buried and Me. You can definitely feel both sides of the equation on this album. It's very heavy, it's very technical. It's one of the things that I particularly like when it comes to solo albums, because you get to see how they function outside of the band that made them so famous. It's kind of like taking a piece out of a puzzle and really scrutinizing that one particular piece to see how that worked, so that when you put it back into the puzzle, you see how it plays well with everybody else. Whenever we have an album like this, there's always going to be benefits because it's a specialization of that one piece. But there's also going to be drawbacks, because certain things that I particularly loved about the band that made them famous are going to be absent within that. And luckily, within here, it's not felt as much. You do feel Ross's singing is missing on this. Richard himself, as well as a number of other individuals, come in to help him out with the vocals and the singing. You also miss a lot of the interplay between the guitar work and the keyboards. There are still a few interplays, but one of the things that I particularly loved about Haken was the plays that we have between the guitars and the keyboards, and a lot of that, unfortunately, is missing. What we have instead is a lot of very technical, very sophisticated guitar work, and I loved it. I think Richard did a fantastic job going out on his own for this particular piece and really trying different things and really stretching his legs. And the one thing that I want to get kind of out first is the structure of this album. I really particularly love the structure and the concept. The concept being how we wrap ourselves in this cocoon, how it kind of helps us develop as people. And then at the end, we do need to break free of it. Getting back to the actual structure of the album, I like how the first 4 tracks really bleed into one another and create a whole unifying suite. And it is enough music to fit onto one album side. So I love how, I think it's Pupa, or Papa, or I think it's Pupa. Pupa, Cocoon, Silken Chains, and Limbo all bleed into one another. How Pupa really is just an introduction and kind of lets us know what's going to happen on here. We get into the title track, also the longest track of Cocoon. Does feel like the continuation of some of the sounds that we were hearing from Vector, Haken's last album. It's kind of like taking that next step forward and really utilizing that. It's less heavy and just more dark in that sense, like the overtones that we have permeating the entire track. And again, Cocoon, it ends with such a blasting of sound. We do have a little bit of the gent drops that they were testing and playing around with within Vector. And then it bleeds directly into Silken Chains. And Silken Chains is a little bit more of a airy approach. This was some of the things that we were expecting with Falling Back to Earth within the mountain, but it still has a lot of technicality within it, and this is found mainly within the mid section of this track, where we have a lot of that picking guitars that are playing within that. So I like how Cocoon is much more of like a powerhouse hitting track, and then Silken Chains are a little bit more of an airy, a little bit more of an atmospheric track that then leads us into the most airy and most atmospheric track of Limbo. Limbo is just a great letdown, and letdown in kind of like a cool off moment. And it's needed after so much time that has been spent within the first 3 tracks. The guitar work that's overlaid onto the synthesized ground is so great. It's almost like you're bouncing on a marshmallow a little bit in that sense. So then we come into the last 3 tracks, and if the first 4 tracks were very like almost one entire suite, then the last 3 are episodic. They're much more individualistic. They still have a little bit in common with one another. Like, I feel like Lunar Room and Twisted Shadows feel very similar in being very punchy, and Afterglow is very much like Limbo and being kind of the final release. Lunar Room and Twisted Shadows are delights and probably my 2 favorite tracks. Lunar Room does start off with I want to say it's Ben Levin. Could be Ben Levin or Marco Serfoigo. Should have checked that one. They actually wrote part of the lyrics within this and rapped over top of this. And whenever an artist starts rapping over top of a progressive rock track, it's been met with mixed reviews, I think we could say with some confidence. But what he's able to do within the time signatures that Richard is playing down, it's really interesting, and I really enjoy it, actually. I can see a lot of people getting turned off by this because it is a little bit more punchy. It does have a little bit more angst without it or within it. But I particularly like this. I like this new kind of a style that Richard is really playing within. And I also like that angst and that build-up that we have towards the midpoint of the track. And we do have that kind of crazy fun point within that midpoint that it does kind of build up towards. And I do like that they saved the rapping for just the beginning and then had very clean and very crisp vocals at the end. Although I do wish that there was a little bit of a reprise of the rapping at the end, but you know, beggars can't be choosers in that sense. I do enjoy how it is left off at the end though. I felt like building it up to such a great point was pretty well done. And Twisted Shadows. I love Twisted Shadows. This is probably my favorite track off the entire album, and actually Jordan Rudess from Dream Theater makes a little bit of an appearance, and you can definitely tell that it's him, but it doesn't stick out. It works extremely well within the song proper. I feel like Twisted Shadows is the missing piece that we were kind of waiting for within Vector, because I still feel like there's something missing from Vector. We have the perfect setup and payoff within the song. I love that setup, and I love that tones that we have within the payoff part of it, and that play out and that guitar work on it, that and I love at the end where it's just like that really fast guitar work on it, that just so good. And you can tell that Richard has really fine-tuned his craft with the guitar work. And yeah, so that's the album, and I love this album. It really blew me away, and it took me a while to really get into it as well. Like the first couple of listens, I was like, okay, not my favorite, but you know, it might just take some time. And the more that I listened to it, the more I found I really, really like this album. Yeah, this is kind of like on par with Haken's last release, and so you know you have something very, very special when the solo artist that put out a brilliant album last year is playing on par with the album. In the end, I have no problem saying that this is one that I would pick up in physical format. I was craving something like this throughout the summertime, and I'm glad that it has come to us kind of now. So that's about it for The Cocoon by Richard Henshall. What did you guys think? Did you love it? Did you hate it? It's been out for quite a while, so I'm sure you've got a opinion about it. So let me know about that by commenting down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.